Welcome to Healing Echoes. Today we have with us Nick Klingensmith. After being thrown out of a Las Vegas hotel in a drunken haze, jeopardizing his career and relationships, Nick had to make a change. A four-time cancer survivor, type 1 diabetic, recovering alcoholic with herniated discs and nerve damage, and sleep apnea, he defies it all when he finds obstacle course racing. Refusing to accept his limitations, he's completed over 100 Spartan races, 6 major marathons, 7 ultras, and scores of other obstacles and endurance events. As someone who has walked the path of a sales professional, Nick is an expert in propelling other achievement-driven professionals and leaders to overcome fear and rejection, push past self-limiting doubts by inspiring them to take purposeful action towards their goals. Nick is a raw and passionate storyteller who holds nothing back when revealing who he used to be and the person he is now. A true testament to the power of resilience, with an unwavering belief in his purpose to overcome obstacles and inspire others to do the same. Nick delivers powerful and transformative speeches, drawing from personal experiences to illustrate the extraordinary potential of pushing through adversity. Hey, Nick, how are you doing?
I'm good, Caitlin. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm so excited to have you on today and have you tell us all about that.
I'm happy to be here and do exactly that.
Awesome. So you start wherever you want, wherever works best for you.
All right. I think I'm gonna do my best to save us the childhood years. We'll do a follow-up on that one, or at least we'll do some throwbacks. But
Right.
my story really, this part of my story really begins in about 2005, and there was a 3-year period where I got cancer, and then everything began to spiral from there
Mm,
because I got cancer. And several months after that, I tore my shoulder, so I needed to have surgery.
hmm
I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, which I began sleeping with a CPAP while
hmm
I was recovering from shoulder surgery.
Oh, wow.
That was a less than ideal situation.
I believe it.
That About a month and a half after that, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Mm.
About 6 months after that, I was diagnosed with cancer for a second time.
Wow.
And if life wasn't throwing a lot at me at that point, there seemed to be a moment where I thought I was done.
hmm
There was a couple of years where it seemed like, all right, cool. I was the victim. I'm just going to be gritty and mad at the world for a while, but nothing else continued to really happen to me. So I thought it would be a good idea to make life considerably harder on myself by just diving headfirst into my alcoholism. And that's really where I spent several of the next of the next several years. From that point, I was wrong that I thought the bad things were going to continue that were going to stop happening.
Right.
My sister died. I was diagnosed with cancer for a third time.
Mm.
Uh, I ultimately got sober, and then 2 years later was diagnosed with cancer for a fourth time.
Wow.
In between that part, my mom died. There was just a lot of life that continued to get thrown at me,
Yeah.
and I really let it. I'm not going to say I let it make me a victim. I'm going to say that I turned myself into a victim. I used all this stuff as my shield.
Right.
This was why I got to be an asshole. This was
Right.
why I got to be complicated. This was
hmm
why when I was moody, it was like, well, I have all these things, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I really used it as an excuse for everything. I began to use an excuse why not to live my life.
Mm.
I saw doctor after doctor when I was got in my car accident and got my
Mm.
herniated discs, and of course they all told me I could never run again, couldn't play volleyball again, not to ride my motorcycle. Basically,
Right.
just build the bubble now
Yeah.
and climb up into it.
Yeah.
And 2 years after I was sober, I was in this place in my life where everything was good. I
hmm
was alive. I had just beaten cancer decisively for the fourth time. I had the beginning of a new relationship with a woman that's now my wife. I was just promoted at work. I mean, I literally was checking all the boxes,
Yeah.
and yet I was lost. I was empty. I had all
Mm.
this blank space in front of me. I had no one left to fight, and I just didn't know where I belonged anymore.
Right.
And then one October afternoon, back in 2016, my boss, who was a good friend of mine, walked into my office. He said, "Hey, I want to do a Spartan race in a couple months, and I want you to do it with me." And I had never heard of a Spartan race before.
Right.
It's a 8 to 10 mile trail run, mud run with obstacles, climbing under things, climbing over things, carrying heavy objects, climbing
Yeah.
ropes. And I looked at him and I was like, no, 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 hell no, absolutely not. I had no intention of making myself that uncomfortable.
Right.
Especially after that story I just told you, I had gotten to a place where I was like, okay, I can deal with this. I like life right now.
Yeah.
But then I went home that night and I thought about it. I thought about the story I just told you, and I thought about how I had everything in the world going for me. And yet I felt more lost and empty and unmotivated than I had ever before. And that's when it occurred to me I already was uncomfortable. I needed something to splash my life. I needed something to mix it up. And so I took him up on the challenge. And well, that was 7 years, 97 Spartans, 6 major marathons, and I've lost count of the other races since then.
You clearly found something that gave you life that you enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. When I signed up for it, I thought it was gonna be a one and done. I
Yeah.
did. And that's why it was 9 weeks away. I thought that was a very manageable chunk of time.
Yeah.
But what I hadn't realized is that because I didn't just sign up for a race, I committed to do the race. I committed to train for the race.
Mm-hmm.
And with every action that I took towards that race, I didn't know that I was actually I was putting together the foundation for a better me.
Yeah.
I say all the time that good habits are gateway drugs
Mm-hmm.
because I signed up for a race that I wanted to train for. And so I
Yeah.
had to do what at the time was the most uncomfortable thing I'd ever done in my life, which was set the alarm for 5 a.m. to get up and train before work. I was talking to my dad on the phone the other day because I told him that I blame him for that I struggled to get up in the mornings.
Yeah.
Because when I lived with him when I was a kid, he used to go by my bedroom. This is how he'd wake me up in the morning. He'd walk by and he'd be like, "Hey, buddy, time to start thinking of waking up." He'd come by a few minutes later. "Hey, buddy, time to start waking." He basically built a snooze button in my head. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's been hard.
Yeah.
But when I committed to that race, I committed to training for it. And so I started waking up on time. And if I wanted to
Yeah.
wake up on time, I had to go to bed on time. And so I treated myself to the first regular sleep cycle I had ever had in my life.
Yeah.
I wanted to continue this journey. So I started stretching and I wanted to get more mentally tough. So I started meditating and,
Yeah.
I wanted to feel better. So I started focusing on diet. Like all these things continue to add up and continue just to create a better life.
Yeah. So it did a lot more good than at the time you even realized that it was going to. You thought it was just a race. And you, like you said, you were like building the foundation for all these other things to make, you an even better person. That's really
A-
awesome.
Absolutely.
I can relate to the sleeping in. Well, me personally never got to sleep in. I grew up on a farm, so we were up at 4:35 a.m. to feed all the animals. But and I'm usually the one that gets up at 5:30 to walk our dog and do my exercises and stuff. But me and my husband were just joking because he's the one that will kind of be like, guys, it's time to get up for school, and they'll be like 5 more minutes. And he'll give them 5 more minutes. And I'm like, get them up, get them up, get them ready. They need to start doing that. Our oldest is terrible about it now because she's used to like this delay. I'm like,
It's a curse.
yeah, get her used to it. She needs more than 30 minutes to get out the door.
One of the
Uh,
things that's different about my life now versus life before is when I was working in an office that I had to be at by 8, I would wake up at 4 in the morning to train.
yeah,
And do I like waking up at 4 in the morning? Of course not. But here's the thing. I don't like waking up at 9 in the morning.
yeah,
I just don't like waking up. So
same.
I might as well wake up where I can get after it and have a
Hmm.
fulfilling day. And the days that I do, everything is better. My attitude's better. I'm productive. I'm more energized. Do I crack? Sure. But that's why I drink as much caffeine as a person can handle in a day. And
I feel that. Yeah, I'm nothing without my coffee. So besides the racing, what else has kind of help you overcome all of those challenges that kind of seem to hit you back to back?
well, so the thing about racing is it's not, to me, obstacle course racing is not a hobby.
Right.
Some it is, some people run some 5Ks, do their turkey trot. Some people go out and do a Spartan race once or twice, or a mud run or something fun, or,
Hmm.
they grab a few beers with their buddies. Like, that's not what it is for me. It became a lifestyle. And so I'm now going into my 8th year, and it's continued to evolve. And so the lessons that I learned from this continue to evolve. So if one of the key moments in my life really was when my boss asked me to do that race, another was when I published my book,
Mhm.
because the events of the book wrap up around 2018, but I didn't publish it till 2021.
Right.
The first year I just wrote. So I can't say there was a profound impact on my life because I was writing the way that I remembered things then. But
Mhm.
after another year of revising and revising and revising, you begin to see your life in a different perspective. You begin to see that the way that you wrote it the first time, you were writing it with emotion. You might have been writing it to prove a point. You weren't
Mhm.
necessarily being honest with yourself. And so that the deeper I continued to dig, just the more open I was able to become with myself. These lessons became to rise to the surface. And these are the things that I began to start carrying with me. And then when I did so, and I saw that this is how being honest with yourself can do, it's like that became a drug,
Yeah.
because the lessons haven't stopped coming. Like every single day, I'm looking at my physical activity, my work activity, my sobriety, my relationships, and I'm thinking about what's standing in my way today. How can I be better today? And
Mhm.
so, every one of these medals behind me, they represent something. It's not just like, oh, we did a race, yay. Like
Yeah.
to me, it might be a fear overcome, it might be an obstacle overcome, it might be the fact that I had to overcome injury or wake up consistently on time
Mm.
before work.
Right.
And again, if you're going to train, I'm 44, almost 45 years old. So I spend more time doing rehab and prehab than I do actually, out there doing it.
Right.
And so it's when I'm spending those, 2+ hours a day training, it's not like I'm in the gym just like slamming weights around.
Right.
Everything I'm doing is a constant, continuous action towards just bulletproofing myself physically and mentally.
Oh, that's awesome. I love the way you put it, that it's not just a race. I think that it means a lot because a lot of people might see the medals and be like, oh, he just likes to race. So it's great that you actually take the time to be like, no, it's more than just racing for me. So tell us more about your book.
The book is called Through the Fire, the story of the four-time cancer survivor, type 1
Mhm.
diabetic, and recovering alcoholic who became an obstacle course racer and defied it all. It is available on Amazon.
Awesome.
And when I wrote it for me. I had
Mhm.
no intention of publishing it. I journal a lot. When I come back from races, I usually do a recap on social media, post pictures. And so if you were to read the book, it goes through a back and forth journey
Mhm.
of personal experiences in the past versus, taking you through various obstacle course races and lessons learned from them, as we go. But so when I really just started writing about getting cancer the first time, the second time, the third time, the
Mhm.
fourth time, when I started writing about the feelings of what it was like when I got diabetes, all these different times that I was told by somebody that my life is going to be forever different now.
Mhm.
And I just wrote them all together, and around towards the end of like middle of 2019, I was like, you know what? I think this can probably be a story.
Yeah.
And so at the end of 2019, I had what was a 127,000 word mindless manifesto. It might as well have been a training manual, a history of Spartan, a history of Sparta, a history of, I don't know, the United States. It was a biography. I mean, it
Right.
was a spiritual guidebook. I don't know. It had like every little piece of component to it. And so that's when I was like, all right, you know what? This can be a book, and I need to just start chopping away here.
Right.
And that's when the it became to have sort of a flow. And because I didn't want it to be a life story,
Mhm.
yet there's just
Right.
my story is so diverse that there's just so many different components that I think matter that need to get told. And I think that's what makes it relatable is I'm not extreme in any one way.
Right.
I mean, even if you look behind me, compared to other people who are in this life,
Yeah.
that's not extreme. There are people who do that in a year.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so I think again, that's why it's like I'm not a Goggins or a Jocko or a Haynes. I'm a
Right.
regular person who just happened to have a lot of a lot of shit happen.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I'm not extreme in any one way. There's not one way I think somebody could look at me and be like, oh, he has it so much worse than me, or I can't do
Right.
that. I feel like I'm just just like everybody else.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's so incredible about your story is that, I mean, getting cancer one time can be so world shattering or changing for so many people. So for you not only to have it multiple times, but then I'll have these other things happening, like finding out that you're diabetic and having car accidents happen and things like that, it kind of shows that these multiple things that are terrible do happen to average people, so to speak, and they overcome it. And so it makes it more relatable. So you actually coming to a point of speaking and telling your story, I think is really, it's awesome because it makes the average person realize like they're not alone. These crazy things do happen and you can get past it. So that's like when we first connected and I seen like all the things that you do and you've been through. I'm like, this is incredible.
It's a, it's a, you know that there's an expression, something out there that's like, there's no good deed or there's no selfless act
Mm-hmm.
because even an act of helping others makes you feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my purpose is to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too. And that's how I look at everything now. You
Mm.
know, I lost my job 3 months ago. Okay, how are we going to handle this? You
Yeah.
know, I got injured in a race and I was like, well, I guess I get to learn how to overcome a hamstring injury now. It's like a fucking game to me now. And it's
Yeah. You're like, what's next?
exactly. And
Yeah.
the reason I mentioned that other thing is because is my philosophy or the way that I look at my own life self-serving? Who cares?
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm using it to help other people.
Yeah.
And when I say that the lessons continue to come out, right? Like you have to be willing to put your ego aside.
Yeah.
And we all have these friends on social media, right? They're either the best at everything or the worst at everything. They're never
Yeah.
just existing. And
Yeah.
I don't I don't think I need to be like that. I think just existing is what will help the most amount of people because I just want to be relatable.
Yeah.
And that's why, I have themes every year. When I got hurt in 2017, right when I was really getting into the sport of obstacle course racing, and I was in a car
Mhm.
accident and got 4 more herniated discs, and the and it almost took it away from me, or at least it felt like it was going to take it away from me.
Right.
And so my theme was comeback for
Mm-hmm.
2017. In 2018, it was defiance because that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to
Yeah.
do everything that everyone said I shouldn't just because I
Right.
can.
Yeah.
I was so sick of doctors telling me you can't do things. And
Yeah.
then, and that's when I realized when they say that, they're not saying that you can't do it. They're saying you can't do it without pain,
Yeah.
without discomfort. And I decided that we don't have the same goals.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to avoid the pain. I'm not trying to avoid discomfort. That's just part of life, mentally, physically,
Yeah.
emotionally, spiritually. It's going to be there if
Yeah.
you are trying to live your life. And the last this year, or going into this year, last
Mm-hmm.
year was all about resilience. Going
Mm-hmm.
into this year, though, is something that I think we've talked about before, is I've just discovered that vulnerability is a superpower.
Yeah, it is.
My The more open I am, the more willing I am to share. I mean, the book opens with a race, but
Yeah.
chapter two is me trying to bang a hooker in a hallway closet in a Las Vegas hotel while my girlfriend is sleeping down the
Yeah.
hallway. I can't put myself out there anymore.
You're like, here's me. Yeah. Literally an open book.
I had to be, because
Yeah.
otherwise who's going to care about the rest of it, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, it's like he plays on jungle gyms on weekends and
You're
who
like, no,
cares?
you
So,
have to show people that you're a real person, and that means that you're not perfect.
I didn't want to admit for years, like when I was dealing with cancer, I didn't want to admit to myself that I was scared.
Yeah.
When I had diabetes, I just didn't want to admit that I was like, this thing is so much more powerful than me. At least that's how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to admit that I was just angry and I
Yeah.
just felt less than.
Yeah.
And now that I'm like able to look at these things, and when you voice them, you face them, and you take away the power that they have over you. And more
Mm-hmm.
importantly, you give that power to someone else to take back their own life.
Yeah.
And that's
You
just a
do.
self-renewing energy. I don't need someone to tell me that I'm a badass or that I'm awesome at obstacles. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm average, maybe.
Maybe.
But if they tell me that sharing my story and sharing my vulnerability and just being
Yeah.
open has been able to help them face their own demons or their own struggles and to take action in their own lives, and just give me another medal because that's winning.
Right. Especially where like resilience is talked about and like telling people how you've overcome, I think that realness and that rawness to say like I was scared or I felt lesser than this thing is important because when people talk about overcoming, all they talk about is how strong they were. They don't really talk about those emotions, and those emotions are very real. They're very normal. We're human. We feel the full range of things. We feel the anger and the scared and the sad. Like that's a part of your story that I think the vulnerability really is necessary, and it's amazing that you've realized that and that like, that's what you're doing now because I think people are more likely to listen and hear your message with the vulnerability there.
If you I believe that we choose our circle on social media.
Yeah.
I'm really tired of all these people on social media telling you that you have to get off of social media.
Yeah.
So I disagree with that completely. I don't
Yeah.
need to get rid of apps on my phone to eliminate distractions. I just need to be disciplined. But that said, I
Amen.
of course follow a certain circle of things on my social
Mhm.
media feeds, and you constantly see like these, you see these pictures of a Spartan warrior or a Roman warrior, right? And it shows like
Yeah.
determination, grit, and boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, so we think that's how it has to be, right? Like you
Yeah.
always have to be tough, but you don't realize
Yeah.
like those energy stores have to come from somewhere. Otherwise, it's not like the tough warrior, it's the exhausted warrior.
Yeah, you're gonna run out.
And so for me, it's constantly trying to align my purpose of what I'm doing with why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I often tell story about a race that I did in June of 22 where I fractured my rib, mile
Mm-hmm.
3 of an 8-mile race. And
Ouch.
I completed that race. I
Wow.
came in dead last. It was my highlight of the year. I did every obstacle, every penalty. And if you were anywhere in Ohio that day, you heard me drop the F bomb loudly and often.
Oh, I believe it.
But here's the part of the story I hadn't told you yet, is that was the first time I ran with fuck cancer written across my chest.
Um,
And it wasn't for me. It was
mm,
for friends of mine who were going through it at the time. And I just didn't know what else to do or how to help them. And I was like, I'm running for you tomorrow. And so
yeah.
I woke up in the morning, I just sharpied it on my chest. And, Spartan events they're family events. There's families around, there's a kids race. And I was kind
Yeah.
of a little apprehensive
Right.
having just
Yeah.
big letters. And then right before the race, this guy walks up to me with his kid. And I was like, oh boy, here it comes.
Yeah.
He thanked me
Oh.
and told me about his wife and breast cancer that she had. And
Mm,
throughout the whole race, that's what everybody was doing. They were either saying, yeah, or fist bumping me, or telling me about somebody that they lost or somebody who's sick. And so when I got hurt, as much as I wanted to quit, I reminded myself over and over again, it's not for me, it's for them. And I need to
yeah.
keep moving.
That's
And
awesome.
I tell you that story because 2 months ago, I strained my hamstring in mile 12 of a 30-mile race.
Mm.
And I found my way to the aid station and hitchhiked out of
I
there.
believe
I
it.
couldn't walk, and
Yeah.
I didn't have that same why. I didn't have the same drive,
Right.
and so I could have been all like, yeah, grit, determination, woohoo, but it also would have killed the rest of my year. There was no purpose for what I was trying to accomplish in that
Yeah.
race. Where the first one, I don't care what happened, nothing was going to take me off of that course.
Yeah. That self-awareness and that being in touch with yourself is phenomenal. Not a lot of people are at that level or at that point yet.
I might have just gotten there.
As long as you're there, it's an accomplishment.
you know, Something that again, like I've just been this huge self-reflection thing, and
Mhm.
I remember back to when I was in junior high school and we were playing PE floor hockey, and I faked an injury so I can get off the floor. But 4 years later, when I was running track in high school, I actually faked not being hurt so I could finish the season.
Mhm.
And because the year before that, I had broken my foot and I knew what it was like to sit out. But the difference being is that I now knew what it was like to be a part of something
Mhm.
bigger than me. And that feeling of belonging, that feeling of, being part of the team, of doing something that just isn't just about you, that
Mhm.
gave me all the power that I needed to overcome pain and fear of pain, which is injury usually is more about fear of pain than it is about the pain itself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just think, I don't know, like when we've talked before, I think that your story is an incredible one. I think it's amazing that you've found your purpose and that you're sharing it with other people so that they can find theirs, so they can find a way through all of the things that might happen because life can get really messy. We know that. um, So in kind of wrapping up, if you have any like last thoughts or a specific message you want to share with anyone, I think this whole episode has been one big, beautiful message. But also ways that people can get in touch with you as well.
Let me kick off with that. I am at Stride Motivation, STRIDE Motivation on pretty much any social channel. Can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn with my name, but at Stride Motivation is probably the easiest way to go. StrideMotivation.com, and the book's on Amazon. But um, today is Tuesday, January 2nd. And I saw somebody on LinkedIn post a message earlier. And they were like, today is day one, get after it. And I felt the need to correct her. I know what she was doing, but my thing is this: today is
Yeah,
not day one, today's day two. And I
yeah.
don't know when you're going to post this, but by the time they listen to it, we're probably not on day two anymore either.
Nope.
So if you set goals,
Yeah,
why aren't you getting after them?
yeah,
You put it on paper, take the action.
yeah,
This year can be defined by excuses or by actions, but it can't be defined by both. And if you don't take one, you're making the other. So my words of encouragement and the thought I have for anybody is to just get started.
yeah. Take that step. That's awesome. I love that. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to having you on again in the future. Like I said, I think you have a lot to share. And yeah, I would really look forward to having you on again and talk even more. Of
Awesome. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
course.